let's talk Jets.
Let's talk about the Jets. They stink.
Joe Douglas, listen, 3-time Super Bowl champion. And when I say that, it's in the form of a scout for 2 of them with the Ravens. Part of that Eagles team that won a Super Bowl. I mean, a handful of years with the Jets and could just never build a champion, which makes you think, my goodness, the guy did everything he could to try to accommodate Aaron Rodgers. The last, Hail Mary, pun intended, was Davante Adams, and it couldn't get done. So to piggyback what Covino said earlier, did the Jets do Joe Douglas a favor and say, later, dude, because he'll land on his feet somewhere.
I think so.
In a front office
The guy knows what it takes to win. He's been there 5+ years. It looks like they're scrambling just to save any face for Aaron Rodgers and the moves that they made. They fired Robert Saleh 6 weeks ago. So this is 6 weeks after Saleh. And we all debated 6 weeks ago, like, is it really his fault here?
So
he's dealing with what he was given.
In these scenarios, Covino, if you're Robert Saleh or now Joe Douglas, and the resume shows that you're not a bum, you're not a slouch. Like I said,
bum, absolutely.
Robert Saleh may not get
a bum.
His next opportunity may not be a head coaching job, but Saleh is well respected as a defensive coordinator. Joe Douglas will eventually get, like I said, a front office position somewhere. The resume speaks for itself.
Well, hold on, pause. You're right. Champion. But as GM with the Jets, as Beyer mentioned in his update, 30-64 in his 5+ years with the Jets, 3-8 this season. Resume speaks that him and his time with the Jets is pretty wackadoodle don't. Those 5 years were weak. And then you have all this hope and you make all these moves, and even the moves you made stink. Like there was nothing. As we said yesterday on the show, one of the viral memes or stats of the weekend was Aaron Rodgers' winning percentage is lower than Sam Darnold's time with the Jets and significantly lower than Zach Wilson's time with the Jets. So his resume is speaking loud and speaking for itself, but it's also speaking that nothing was helping the Jets.
But I love your analogy. If you're at a bad job or in a bad marriage, sometimes getting let go, they're doing you a favor. And in that moment, it might be like, man,
in the
got
moment
fired.
It stinks, yeah.
Man, I got divorce papers. What the hell? But maybe when you fast forward and life takes its next turn, you're like, you know what? Thank God I'm not with that trash organization anymore.
Yeah, look, from our own experience, the pandemic brought us to a point where we lost 2 gigs. And at the time, it stung. It really did, because it's a panic situation, especially if you have family. What's next? What are we going to do? In broadcasting especially, there's only so many slots available, right, to do what you do. And, it was a blessing in disguise, as Tom Brady says, maybe. Was it the worst thing ever? Maybe, but maybe not. Because it led us here to this point at Fox Sports Radio. So, hey, Joe Douglas may end up somewhere so much better for him, and that's just how life works. Otherwise, Rich, we'd be, let's say, quote-unquote, in that old bubble we were in, instead of on Fox Sports Radio.
Yeah. Listen, I'm sure today stings, but Dan Beyer, we talked about this, a month ago.
Honestly, I'd still be in a terrible relationship. You're absolutely right in my personal life. Trying my hardest.
You would have fought tooth and nail.
Well, I wouldn't have given up on being with my kid 24/7 every day. Being in what people consider a failed relationship, I would have kept trying really hard because that's in my nature. So looking back, I'm glad that I got divorced. I mean, I didn't need to be served papers on Christmas morning, but it's a favor. Yeah, it did happen. But it's a favor looking back because I'd still be in that, Sam. You see what I'm saying?
I mean,
Joe Douglas would still be with the miserable Jets. I don't think he's a 30-64 career caliber type of GM. He could be better.
It would have only been better, I was saying, if she had put them in a stocking.
Or you open up a box of
What's
papers.
this?
Yeah, but you can laugh about it now.
Filed for
right.
What?
Exactly.
Santa?
I didn't ask for that, Santa Claus.
Dan Beyer, we spoke about it like a month ago, and I remember you and I discussing how Joe Douglas might as well go for it. Yeah. When we were like, should he go for Davante Adams and give up a pick? And
yeah.
It's like, Why? What do you have to lose? Because if it
You're
doesn't
all in.
work, you're out. So
Dan Byer said you got to go all in.
go all in. Went for Devontae Adams. Took all of Aaron Rodgers' suggestions of free agents and players on the move, and he died on the sword of Aaron Rodgers, essentially.
Yeah, basically. And you can say that he tried everything, and whether they were Aaron Rodgers' suggestions or not, but at least they went for it.
Yeah.
And it has failed in spectacular fashion over these last couple of weeks.
It's almost great.
But
It's almost like I'm not a cynical guy usually, but the fact that many people do roll their eyes at Aaron Rodgers, he got Devontae Adams. It's almost like it was like, here, you can't, no more excuses, and it's still terrible.
Absolutely.
The only solace you have.
You say Salah?
Solace.
Oh, Salah. Okay, sorry.
As a GM and in life is when you leave no stone unturned, and when you really do try everything and leave it all out there, like DB suggested with Joe Douglas, there are less regrets. So what could he say? Yo, man, I did everything I could. I brought Aaron Rodgers here, Adams, and everything else.
You
We
could
bent
argue
over backwards to make this work for Aaron Rodgers.
You could argue
you want
that,
to fire me? Go right ahead.
You could argue that the Jets are a piece of garbage. Pardon me, I almost slipped there. Piece of garbage organization, but Joe Douglas tried to make them relevant by getting Aaron Rodgers. Like, that alone was like, yo, he's doing everything he could. So I'm not saying Joe Douglas is the first GM hired on a new team, but he really did, like you said, in a relationship, at a job. If you feel like, yeah, dude, I did everything I thought I could.
Oh, it made life
You could
so
sleep
much
at night.
easier for me to move on and move forward in a failed relationship, knowing that I tried everything.
Like if you
So
got
this guy
caught
can't
doing
feel that bad.
Like if you got caught doing something stupid and that's why your marriage failed, then you could like lose sleep. But if you tried and it just didn't work,
And by the way, it's the nature of the beast of a GM too, and you have to know that when you take that gig. There's a documentary out right now for your viewing pleasures called The Comeback. It's about the 2004 Red Sox. Danny G watched it. Rich, I know you're watching it now, but it's a famous story of Theo Epstein saying, I think for this team to win, we need to get rid of Noma. And he was like everything to the Red Sox. So people are like, wait a second.
What?
If this doesn't work, you're going to lose your gig as a GM. But as a GM, you know that these moves define you. And you could only hope because you're putting your reputation and your career on the line based on the performance of those players.
you don't realize sometimes the power of a GM. We used to work with Steve Phillips at SiriusXM, and when I would talk to him in the kitchen, sometimes I'd be like, "This is just a regular guy. I'm chopping it up with in the kitchen." He was making decisions for my Mets. At some point, you make these big choices, and like you said in that documentary,
You know who the Red Sox got? So a young 28-year-old Theo Epstein said to himself, I think in order for this team to win, we need to get rid of Nomar Garciaparra,
Noma.
the face of the Red Sox.
You almost can't say his name without a Boston accent.
Noma. He was everything for the Red
Noma.
Sox. He was the star of the Red Sox, but he was going through a weird pouty phase at the time, coming off of injuries. But he was still playing. And he said, I'm going to put my career and GM and young GM reputation on the line in hopes that Doug Minkiewicz and Orlando Cabrera could bring the juice. Imagine that.
Mm-hmm.
And they did. And that's how he gained that reputation. Joe Douglas said, I'm going to put all my eggs in Aaron Rodgers. That seems like a no-fail. In Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams and whatever makes him happy. And it didn't work out. Just how it is.
Sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah,
Right?
sometimes you're surprised.
Have you ever seen that?
But you're putting all your faith in what these guys could do to make you look good.
Have you ever seen that documentary? It's a short, like a little mini doc where there's one guy that cashed in all his assets and he went to Vegas and bet his life earnings and savings on one roulette spin.
Yeah, I've heard of this.
And as the ball spins the first time, he pushes everything on red and he wins. That's an extreme example of what management and ownership of a sports franchise goes through. That draft pick, what quarterback, if you have a top 5 pick, the quarterback you choose could determine the next 5 to 10 years of your organization. Danny, you're a Raiders fan. Before the draft, you were thinking there would be a quarterback that would fall into your hands at some point, right? You were talking about Penix Jr.
Penix Jr. should have been there on the board.
But sometimes
But it
it's not just names and stats when it comes to these things. It's how they fit into the organization and how they gel with the other players. And that's where GM's instinct really comes into play.
And throughout the special you're talking about, it shows that once in a while Epstein would make a point to go to the locker room to take a temperature read of the chemistry that was going on inside that locker room.
Damn. So for all we know, Joe Douglas mixed some wrong people together. Maybe Aaron Rodgers didn't gel with the young guys he had there already. So, maybe he wasn't as good as we think. But honestly, at what point do we just say Aaron Rodgers should be the guy?
Listen,
Not fired. And,
not to backtrack, Covino, but I'll admit when I was wrong. I'm that type of guy. When he went to Egypt and we were all like, oh, come on, it's Aaron Rodgers. He can miss a couple practices. Come on, he's going to deliver. This Jet team is playoff bound. Who cares that he left the team to go do his own thing? For all we know, that was the beginning of some feathers ruffled. That might have been the beginning of a team divided. We don't know. There's so many layers here.
Well, there are rumors as of today. Well, online rumors, so it doesn't mean there's any legitimate juice to it, but is this the return of Belichick? I saw a lot of memes floating around about that today. Hey, you need a coach, you need a GM. How about Belichick? How does he fit into that?
One guy can do both.
Yeah.
The meme said.
I mean, if you're
can't do both.
We're playing the Jets this week.
If you're talking Belichick, more likely Jets or Cowboys.
I think he's more likely to bring the boom in Dallas than with New York.
Whereas primetime Deion Sanders headed to the NFL eventually.
He hates the Jets.
Yeah.
He despises the Jets. Everything about them, even though he was going to be their head coach. Well, he was their head coach technically for a day, like on two separate occasions. It was, first of all, they were trying to run like the scheme to cover up Parcells because Parcells couldn't coach, so it was going to be this puppet regime, or Belichick was going to hold the seat, and then it was that he took over because Parcells tried to strong arm. Anyway, he was taking shots at the Jets, as recently as a couple weeks ago on the Manning cast.
Yeah, I saw that.
So I think the Cowboys would be the pick of the two, just because the Jets are going to finish in last.
No doubt. But hey, that was the big lead today. You heard it on Dan Byer's update.
And by the way, Joe Douglas is my age. So, yeah, he has plenty of career left, but how many opportunities does he get in the NFL?
That guy's your age?
Yeah.
Looks like he could be your dad.
So I'm saying he's got a lot of life left and career left in him.
Coaching.
But
and,
it's not like they're handing out GM jobs everywhere.
Front office work is hard. It's a toll on your health.
Holy
Seriously.
mackerel.
Way stressful than doing radio.
Well, hey, your thoughts, if you want to talk a little Joe Douglas, a little Jets, a little NFL, 877-99 on Fox. We'll talk more NFL and what fan bases might be a little depressed, a little
Do you think players
thankless.
feel bad, Rich? Do you think players feel bad, though, that they're costing like coaches their jobs? Do you think they don't care at all?
You've heard a lot of times where a coach gets let's go, and the team is like, man, we're like sad we didn't deliver for you.
Dang.
I remember when Terry Collins, the Mets sort of decided to move on together from him.
Mm-hmm.
There were guys like Pete Alonso and stuff that were like, yeah, we feel bad that we didn't do more.